thousands turn out to say a final goodbye to Sinead OConnor. The funeral procession in Ireland was met with spontaneous applause, people singing and silence as a country and a legion of music fans mourn a star and a campaigner.
I think we're still finding out what Sinead meant to us as a country and as a town. I think her legacy is immense and we'll only really be discovering it in the weeks, months and years to come.
Also ahead, Portugal burns as a third heatwave hits parts of southern Europe. Anger as Britain's wonkiest pub is reduced to rubble. The obesity crisis: could your brain be the reason you are overweight? The new research. Plus, beaten as a baby, legs amputated because of his injuries, Tony is now on top of the world.
You can do anything. Even if you're differently able, you can do everything, can't you?
This is the ITV Lunchtime News with Nina Hossain.
Good afternoon. People have filled the streets in Ireland to pay their respects to the artist and activist Sinead OConnor following the late singer's private funeral. The star died in London last month and is being buried in Bray, the seaside town the singer called home. The imam delivering her eulogy said she brought diverse souls together through her art and orchestrated a symphony of unity during her final journey. Our correspondent John Ray on the woman so many found rebellious, empowering and inspiring.
In the coastal town she called home for 15 years, they lined the streets to honour Sinead OConnor, the woman many here knew not as an international star, but as simply a good neighbour. Unconventional to the end, a camper van decked out in rainbow flags of diversity led her cortege. At one point, the hearse came to a halt in the crowds. There was a final standing ovation. This outside her former home here, where locals recall her sitting and chatting with them in her garden. Her friend, Sir Bob Geldof, was among the many mourners sharing their memories and paying tribute.
I think we're still finding out what Sinead meant to us as a country and as a town. I think her legacy is immense and we'll only really be discovering it in the weeks, months and years to come.
She stood for so many things, like social injustice, like across the whole world, women's rights, mental health issues, in adults and in children. And she stood out in Ireland. She's one of the greatest women to come from Ireland, in my eyes.
Famously ill at ease under the bright lights of fame, she was laid to rest in privacy. The eulogy referred to the hardships and adversities she'd faced, but also her ability to share solace and joy. Few voices so evocative, and back then many fewer women working in the male-dominated music industry, and none quite so prepared to show their vulnerability. And none so uncompromising in their beliefs.
Fight the real enemy!
Even when it came at such cost to her career. Sinead OConnor played an outsized role in the making of modern Ireland, acknowledged by this tribute on an Irish hillside and by the Irish President, Michael D. Higgins, who said she had a profound impact on people. Today, the Irish people and fans around the world said thank you for the music and for the life of a singer and activist beyond compare. John Ray, ITV News.
To the latest now on the large boat the government says is helping with the small boats crisis. While 15 people have boarded the Bibby Stockholm barge in Dorset, 20 others have refused to go on board. The Home Office, facing yet more legal challenges, is threatening they could lose any rights to any accommodation. Critics say the focus on the 500 places on the barge ignores the 50,000 asylum seekers waiting in hotels to be processed. Our political reporter Jasmine Cameron-Chilsey has more.
This morning, another handful of migrants arrived to board the Bibi Stockholm. It's meant to house hundreds, but the government is facing legal challenges from lawyers concerned about safety. Now, reports reveal that asylum seekers were sent a letter by the Home Office warning that failure to board the barge would result in losing access to temporary accommodation. And cabinet ministers insist the government is determined to get migrants onto the vessel.
Plainly, there have been some objections made, some legal objections, which means that the numbers aren't as high as we'd like. We don't agree with those. We think that they're opportunistic, they're misconceived, wrong-headed, and so on. And we'll challenge those. We'll address those in the courts. But look, the central point is this: that the British people are fair-minded. But what is not fair is to offer four-star accommodation.
The government estimates it costs taxpayers around £6 million a day to house migrants in hotels, and the number in temporary hotel accommodation is rising from 1,200 in March 2020 to around 50,000 today.
Arrests over the last year has gone up considerably.
Tackling migration is one of the Prime Minister's top priorities, but initiatives have repeatedly hit roadblocks. And even the government's flagship policy of deporting migrants to Rwanda is still stuck in the courts.
The government's approach to illegal migration and to asylum claims is just a massive mess. And I mean, it's been characterised by a lot of angry rhetoric and a lot of gimmicks, really. I mean, the Rwanda, even if it gets through the courts, as it may well do later this year, again, can only take a tiny minority of asylum seekers.
Ministers will be hopeful that they can overcome the latest legal challenges. But even at capacity, the Bibi Stockholm will house just 500 migrants, a fraction of the tens of thousands in need of support. Jasmine Cameron-Chilsey, ITV News, Westminster.
Our political correspondent Carl Dinnan is in Portland. Carl, what's happening there today exactly?
Well, as Jasmine says, we think some more migrants have arrived to stay on the Bibi Stockholm, but probably only a very small number. The bus that we saw arriving that we think was carrying migrants had a couple of people that we could see. There may have been others, but it was nowhere near full. There are also other buses which are coming and going from the Bibi Stockholm to take people out for exercise and whatever else they want to do. They can't leave the Bibi Stockholm on their own. They have to be bussed out through the port complex. The other thing that is going on is that the government is trying to get people who've refused to come to move here. Now, the ones that we know of who've refused to come and have engaged lawyers have not been sent the same letters that those others that we've heard about who've been threatened with homelessness. And the group Care for Calais thinks it is clear now, they've said in a statement in the last few minutes, the government is now trying to target those asylum seekers who have been unable to secure legal representation by threatening to make them homeless if they don't move. So there is a developing dispute away from here about who comes and who doesn't. None of it is straightforward.
Carl Dinnan, thank you very much. Parts of Portugal are battling wildfires after days of searing temperatures. Last night, more than 2,000 firefighters were involved in the mission, which has seen 1,400 people evacuated in the Odemira region. The country, as well as Spain, is seeing its third heatwave of the summer, and forecasters are warning this could be the worst yet. Sam Holder has the latest.
More flames in southern Europe. So far, 16,000 acres have been destroyed by these wildfires in Portugal. High temperatures and strong winds have made them difficult to contain, and now they've reached the fringes of the Algarve, one of the most popular regions for the 5 million Brits who travel to Portugal each year. The flames have crossed into the northern part of the Algarve, which is still 50 miles or so from where most tourists visit on the southern coast.
People in the Algarve will go to the kind of towns of Faro, Portimao, Albufeira, and so far it has just been inland. But as with all wildfires, with all kind of extreme weather, you just have no idea how fast the situation can change. If you're worried, speak to your tour operator or your holiday partner. So they aren't obliged to give you any kind of refund or cancel your holiday until the Foreign Office advice changes.
The extent of the fires could clearly be seen by the European Union's Copernicus satellite. On the ground, at least 1,400 people have been evacuated. For the time being, the major tourist sites are still safe. But with extreme heat alerts in place, the challenge isn't just stopping these wildfires, but the fear others may start as well. Sam Holder, ITV News.
We know climate change increases the risk of more frequent heat waves, but today scientists warn that changes in Antarctica could lead it to becoming the planet's radiator instead of refrigerator. Our science correspondent Martin Stew is with me. Talk us through this latest research.
Well, I mean, Antarctica is one of the last remaining wildernesses. Absolutely stunning place, really important for the climate, but very, very hard for scientists to monitor because of the wilderness you can see from these pictures. They're trying to get an idea of exactly what's going on, and they said what's happening now would have been unprecedented just 30 years ago. A heat wave last March saw temperatures on average 38.5 degrees above average. Now, that was caused by a river of warm air coming from Australia. You can see in this next map there. That's the equivalent of it being 46 degrees on Christmas Day here in the UK. Unbelievable stuff. If that had happened in the summer, lots of ice would have melted. And talking of ice, sea ice is at record low levels. We've had 3 out of the last 7 years have broken the record. And if we look at what's happening, it looks like this year, you can see from the red line, is going to be even worse. You've got lots of ice melting on the land. You've also got ice sheets breaking away. That's a natural thing. That's what forms icebergs. But it seems to be happening quicker. And all of this has got scientists worried.
Some of the events that we are seeing are so off the scale that it's shocking, in fact. And if it is the case that with continued fossil fuel burning, those will be greater in intensity and frequency. We've got much to worry about.
OK, so how could it impact us?
Well, 2 main ways, really. First of all, you've got to think that Antarctica is 90% of the world's ice. It's 4 kilometres thick in some places. Now, if all that was to melt, sea levels would rise 57 metres. No one's saying that's going to happen anytime soon, but they do expect melting to increase. The more sea levels rise, the more flooding, the more erosion. And the other big thing is that Antarctica is white. It reflects lots of heat away. The more of that melts, the less heat is absorbed and the hotter the whole planet gets, which impacts us here as well.
Martin, thank you very much. Thank you. Still to come, anger after Britain's wonkiest pub is reduced to rubble following a fire. And he's done it. Tony, the 8-year-old adventurer's biggest challenge yet. First, students in Scotland are finding out if they'll get into their universities of choice. More than 100,000 received results for their equivalent of GCSEs and A-levels this morning. While the pass rate has fallen since last year, it's still higher than it was before the lockdowns. Higher and advanced higher papers are the Scottish equivalent to A-levels. This year, 77.1% of pupils got A to Cs for hires. At the advanced higher levels, 79.8% were awarded a pass grade. The national 5 qualifications are like GCSEs. 78.8% of students who took those got A to Cs. Our Scotland reporter Louise Scott is at Craigmount High School in Edinburgh. Louise, a big day for these students who saw so much disruption to their education.
It has been a big day, a nerve-wracking day from those I've spoken to. Most, of course, receiving the results through text message. Others who hadn't signed up had to wait on that traditional letter coming through their letterbox. This is the second year that Scottish pupils have sat exams back in the halls like they did pre-pandemic, but there is no doubt that 2 years of disruption, some home learning, has had an impact on their education. The Scottish Qualifications Authority have said they had a more sensitive approach to marking this year, but pass rates are more in line with what we saw in 2019. And they are down, of course, from that peak during the pandemic when it was teacher-marked assessments. Well, joining me now is 3 pupils from Craigmount High. Katie, I'll come to you first. How did you get on?
I think I did quite well, actually. I'm very chuffed with what I got. It's very similar to what I thought I would get, and it's what I need to do what I want.
Did you feel more relaxed with the exam process this year, having sat National 5s last year?
Yeah, I felt I knew what I was doing this year compared to last year. Last year it was all very new, but this year I knew what to do. It was just harder information.
Yeah, and what about yourself, Emma? You're also sitting hires. How did you get on?
I'm very happy with what I got, yeah.
How have you found the pandemic's impacted on your education?
Well, it definitely made a difference at the start because it was online learning and you didn't have the teacher-student connection, and it was hard to come back into school from that, but in the second year of exams it gets a bit easier, yeah.
Fraser, finally to you, how did you get on?
It was all right. It was not exactly what I expected, but it was pretty good.
Stay for sixth year for a few more?
Definitely.
Well, thank you all so much and good luck for the rest of it. Scottish Government are saying that next year we're much more likely to see the results similar to what we saw pre-pandemic, so we'll have a much better idea of where Scottish education is sitting.
Louise Scott, thank you. In the last hour, England's star striker Lauren James has apologised for stamping on her opponent's back in the World Cup in Australia. James was sent off in yesterday's clash against Nigeria. She faces an automatic one-match ban, which could be extended to 3 games by FIFA's disciplinary committee. England made it through on penalties yesterday and will now face Colombia in the quarter-finals on Saturday. What remained of Britain's wonkiest pub, the famous Crooked House, has now been reduced to rubble. A fire at the weekend destroyed the 18th century building near Dudley just 2 weeks after it was sold to a private buyer. Today, the Mayor of West Midlands demanded it should be rebuilt brick by brick. Daniel Henry has the latest.
This is all that remains of the Crooked House pub after it caught fire. This video posted on social media appearing to show diggers demolishing what's left. The Mayor of the West Midlands, Andy Street, said, "We therefore ask you to consider ensuring the property is rebuilt brick by brick before any further discussion of the site take place." The Crooked House had been on the slide for a while, but that was part of its charm. Regulars would tell you it was the slope that made it special.
You look at this window right in front of me, like it's literally like this. So yeah, it is really cool.
If it does close permanently, that'd just be such a huge shame, to be honest.
It's been a pub since the 1800s. It was sold to a private buyer for alternative use last month. Now, the police and fire services are trying to find out how this much-loved building could have ended up like this. Daniel Henry, ITV News.
A man charged over the death of a child on the M62 has appeared in court. Matthew Rycroft from Leeds is accused of causing or allowing the death of 12-year-old Callum Rycroft. A car hit Callum as he was walking across the motorway on Saturday night. Next, this lunchtime, 2/3 of people in the UK are obese or overweight, but are our brains responsible? Scientists have been looking at the evidence which suggests the brains of those who are overweight operate differently to those that aren't. Carrie Davis explains.
If you've been trying to shift a bit of weight but struggle to feel full, it could be that your own brain is working against you. Scientists at the University of Cambridge believe that the appetite control centre is different in the brains of people who are overweight or obese. Here it is. It's called the hypothalamus, and it's very small, about the size of an almond, which is why not much is known about how it works. But what we do know is it's important. It controls the release of hormones that tell us if we're hungry or full, as well as making us sweat if we're too hot, or making us shiver to create heat if we're too cold. Researchers looked at brain scans from more than 1,000 young adults. They noticed that this control centre is bigger in the brains of overweight or obese people. And on even closer inspection, the differences in size were even more apparent in the area within the hypothalamus, which is in charge of hunger hormones. What scientists aren't sure of is what comes first. Do some people have a naturally large hypothalamus, meaning they'll eat more and put on weight? Or does eating more lead to a larger hypothalamus? Studies in mice suggest the link can lead to being trapped in a vicious cycle where they eat more and then want to eat more. But much more research is needed before drawing the same conclusion for us.
Finally, there is no stopping the Pride of Britain winner Tony Hudgel. He may only be 8, but the boy, abused by his parents so badly his legs had to be amputated, has completed yet another challenge. He's just scaled a mountain in the Lake District to raise yet more money for the foundation in his name. Pablo Taylor was at the summit to speak to Tony and his adoptive mum.
Well, I'm at the finish line of Tony Hudgel's latest challenge, a mile-long walk through the Lake District. An incredible achievement for 8-year-old Tony. Tony, how was that for you?
Wow. Just wow. I can't believe it. So I had a friend do two friends do it with me, and we done it.
So many people turned out for you. What do you make of the support that you got today?
I think it's incredible, don't you? Amazing. Absolutely incredible. Wow. There's so many people here.
Just amazing. Wow.
Yeah.
Mum Paula, you must be so proud of Tony.
Oh, so proud. I got really emotional at the end, just seeing him coming up and everybody clapping, and to see him with Harry as well was absolutely incredible.
You should have told me.
Harry, of course, was the first double amputee to reach the summit of Everest. That was a special turnout.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, absolutely incredible. Just showing that, you know, even if you are differently abled, what you can achieve.
You can still do everything.
Yeah, absolutely.
Anything.
Absolutely anything.
Anything.
And I know this walk was delayed to allow you to take part. Talk us about your challenge over the last year or so.
Yeah, I was diagnosed with bowel cancer last February, and I had to have 3 major operations and 6 months of chemo. But hopefully we're through the worst of it now. So.
And you can do anything.
You can do anything.
Even if you're definitely able, you can do everything, can't you?
You can. Anything's possible.
Anything.
You have to dream
if you try,
to achieve it.
If you just try, that's all we ask.
That's it. That is all we ask.
Perfect. Well, look, congratulations to you both.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Pablo Taylor reporting there with Tony. Lucrezia is here with the evening news at 6:30 from everybody on today's Lunchtime team. Bye-bye.